Let's get to the NFL owners meetings in particular. We're back with the tush push. There's a couple of playoff reseeding is another big thing here. So walk me through what you have your eye on here when you're going to be on the floor at the
Sure.
Posh Omni. And after, I'm guessing, sourcing up at the, because I just want to get this correct. I think Albert is going to be tracking down multiple owners at the, it's there's upscale. At Tiki Social.
Tiki
So it's
Social. There
it's a
you go.
tiki themed Hawaiian bar that has exclusive drinks from tiki historian and mixologist Jeff Beach Bum Berry, which is exactly what you'd expect and want in the middle of freaking Minnesota. But anyway, go ahead.
So yeah, I think the one that's going to probably get the most attention is the push play, and so the NFL always sends out a packet with all the rules proposals in it ahead of all of these meetings, and they have 4 of these meetings over the course of the year. And the rules proposal that the Packers put in March that did not have the votes to pass, it was about 16-16. It was about half and half, and they need 3/4 of the vote, which is 24 yeses, is unchanged. Now, that does not mean that they are going to absolutely positively vote on the rule as it stands. And so one thing to look at is like what was brought up in the room in March. And, Rich McKay, who's the competition committee chair, who is the Falcons CEO, he raised the idea of what the rule was in 2004. And the rule in 2004 was very black and white. It was an offensive player cannot push or pull a teammate to cross a line. And so they pulled that out of the rules in early 2005. And the reason why was actually, I mean, this is kind of crazy, but it was because there was an issue officiating downfield when players come running into a scrum. And it was hard to tell whether the offensive player was coming in and blocking a defensive opponent or pushing his own teammate. So, how do you delineate? They just decided to make it simpler for the officials. They pulled that rule out, which eventually ended up leading to what we have now with the Eagles. So McKay had actually brought up the idea of going back to that. And I'd be surprised if they didn't consider that as maybe the proposal that they actually vote on. But clearly the commissioner wants to push this thing over the goal line because they they weren't close in March. Like this wasn't like 1 or 2 votes, and like we can gerrymander a way to figure out how to get this done. They were 8 votes away. That's a lot.
Right.
And so, and if the commissioner was okay with letting this die on the vine, it would have just died on the vine. And just so people know, like these things all get voted on. They just don't tell you when they vote it down. When they vote it
Yeah.
down, generally what they'll say is, "Oh, we tabled it," or we just decided not to do it this time. We just decided not to vote on it this time. So, like in this case, I think the commissioner is very motivated to get something done, and whether or not he does, we'll see. The playoff reseeding thing is interesting to me because I think they have this one like. I thought it was about fairness with what happened with the Lions and the Vikings last year. This is really more, I believe it or not, about making money and about the end of the season, about week 17 and week 18, and creating more compelling matchups. And they think in an open seeding system that they would have more matchups. There was a slide that they presented to all the owners that showed how all of these different teams would have had way more possibilities going into week 18 last year if it was an open seeding system. So there was some thought like, okay, like, should we really look at this for the good of week 6, week 17, week 18? This thing was even further away though from getting voted through.
Mm.
My understanding is they only had a handful of teams that were good with this. So are they going to flip more than half the room? I don't think so. But I think the league, and the reason the commissioner tables it and brings it to the spring meeting is because he wants it passed. And the reason he wants it passed is because he wants as appealing a product as he can possibly sell to the broadcast partners. And the better matchups you have down the stretch, the easier it is to do that.
You know who this is big for is CBS broadcaster Spiro Dides, who I always feel really bad for. He gets like Jets Patriots when they're both
Yeah.
4-13 in week 17, but now he'll get a banger, you know? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think relevant games late in the season are good, but I will say my pushback to this is, I mean, and the NFL will never think this, they'll never realize it, they will never take it into account, but at some point you have to work in some sort of an organic rest for your players. And so now with the broadcast schedule the way it is, the NFL is banging it so that everybody is in prime time, Europe, Brazil, London. And all their best players or star players are going to be absolutely gassed and exhausted by week 10. They're going to be jet lagged, whiplash. And so you get to the point where week 18 is almost a necessary little bit of respite for these teams before the playoffs start. Resting your players is a reward in a lot of these situations where you don't want to be playing. Like, you deserve the right to not play a high octane football game the final week of the season, you know?
And I think like the Rams are a good example of it from last year, right? Like, because they did have something to play for in week 18. They could have been the 3 seed or the 4 seed, and they wind up deciding, okay, like, we're going to rest our guys, and they wind up losing the 3 seed. Now, a lot of people looked at that and said, well, like, that was a mistake, right? Like, a lot of people looked at it and said, like, I think they wound up playing the Vikings instead of, I believe it would have been the Commanders, right? So like, a lot of people looked at that and said, well, that was a huge mistake. Now you're stuck playing the Vikings. Well, was it a mistake? Because the Vikings went through a war in week 18 against the Lions. The Rams were rested. And what was the result? It was the Rams came out of it looking like they had fresh legs. The Vikings had trouble dealing with them up front, and the Rams went going away. And so like, now it's even like to a level where you say, I mean, like, do you have to start to think about these things with the 17-game season? And then does it become an even bigger thing when you go to the 18-game season? Like, that's what I think the owners are concerned with, is they're pushing these players further and further and further. And it's going to get to the point where at some point there's going to be a benefit to rest, even if it means throwing a game overboard. It's like what's happening in the NBA. You know what I mean? Like, and so I wonder if they're concerned. I think that the owners are concerned because they know, they view every single game as like this piece of real estate that they can sell to the broadcast, to the broadcast partners.
Yeah.
And like, if you have teams doing what NBA teams do with their regular season, well, then you're going to devalue that real estate. But it is getting to the point now where, again, I think the Rams are a great example of it. Like, you are at a point now where it's like, maybe it is the best thing going into the playoffs for us to give our guys a rest, give our guys a natural bye, even if it comes at the cost of a seed that has us playing a 14-win Viking team instead of a 12-win Commander team.
Right. I wonder too if we just start to see in football.
Here's the other. One other thing I want to say about this before I lose my train of thought on it, but I also think like the schedule formula needs to be taken into account here too. Because like, I look at this right now, right? Like last year or this year, right? The NFC East, we've talked about this, plays the NFC North and the AFC West, right? Those two divisions, the NFC North and the AFC West, had 6 playoff teams in them last year, right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the NFC West gets the 2 South divisions. So they play the NFC South and the AFC South. So is that fair? Like that you could have a team win the NFC West, which the NFC West isn't an easy division to begin, isn't like a cakewalk of a division to begin with. And then I mixed that up. The NFC East, like, is it fair that an NFC East champion would have to like go through that gauntlet of playing all the teams in the North, playing all the teams in the AFC West, and then and then they get seated below a team in the NFC West that had like those 8 games against the 2 South divisions that are just,
I totally agree,
not the same, you know?
That's what it is. It takes away, this is my one issue. The playoff reseeding takes away the integrity of the division. And I understand a lot of people's rubs where it's like, okay, well, someone's going to win the NFC South every year, and that sucks, and it's not fair that team gets into the playoffs, and that's true. But and that same juncture, a 9-8 NFC South team is just going to get waxed off the face of the earth anyway, and it doesn't really matter. But an NFC East team like this year or last year, an NFC North team, or the year before that, an AFC North team, when they win that division, they might just have a bad record relative to the rest of the NFL because that division is awful, and you come out of there with broken bones at the end of the season. And so
Right.
I do think that more often than not, it's really hard to win your division. I think
I
there's
mean,
like
and
two or
this is
three
where,
cakewalk divisions in the NFL.
and this is like another area where it's like there's friction between the NFL as a football product and the NFL as an entertainment product, where
Right.
the football product is like, how do you get your teams in the best spot to perform at the highest level when you get to the playoffs? The entertainment product is we want to keep everybody engaged nonstop, you know?
Yeah.
So like there's friction there, I think, between the two, which I mean, that's existed for a long time now in the NFL. I mean, that's in a lot of cases the NFL's league office, Park Avenue against the football people for the 32 teams,
Right.
and they're sort of jockeying for who do the owners side with. And generally, I think we know what the answer is, like whatever will make them money, right? So
Your gut, what does it tell you? Do we see
I think
any? Do
eventually,
we?
there's going to be a change to the seating system. Yes.
Okay.
I think
Do you
eventually
think
there
it?
will be. I don't know. I don't know if it'll happen. I don't know if it'll happen this week. I don't think it'll happen this week, but I think it's something they're going to look at and like say like, okay, like let's take another year and study it. I don't think it happens this week, but I don't. But I think I think the commissioner pushes it. And I wouldn't be floored if it happens. I don't think they're ready for it yet.